Phew. Hello, hello.
Hello.
What's
Good to
up?
see you. Actually, I'm just going to shut that window real quick because I'm realizing it's noisier than I realized.
Huh.
Yeah, no, things are going well. How are you?
I'm doing great. I will say on Sunday, I ran into a scenario where my car died. So
Oh,
dealing with that, like it just died on the highway.
shoot. That's
Yeah,
exciting. What did
it's
you do? AAA?
in the grand scheme of things, it wound up being like fine. For so many reasons, it could have been worse. But yeah, my dad had been traveling for the last month, and he was back, and I was supposed to meet with him. I was going to meet with him in the next like 30 minutes after that would happened. Um, and so because he was like around, like he has AAA and it's like all in his name, it would have been a big to do for me because I don't have AAA
Mhm.
myself. Because long story short, I didn't drive for like 10 years. I gave up my license when I was living in New York because I had always grown up driving in Atlanta. And like part of the reason of going to New York was to live in a city that I didn't need to drive because I was so used to driving. And then, like an idiot young person, like I just was like, I don't really need to deal with my license when it came time to like renew. I'll just like future me will have to deal with that. And then like 10 years later, it became future me when I moved back to Atlanta. The reason is because it expired like 2 years into my New York experience. We're talking like 2013 or 14, and they didn't do like online renewal. So I had to like fly home and go to the DMV. That I was just like made a decision of whatever. I just don't really care.
Right.
Um,
I'm not using this. I'll deal with it later.
yeah, and so because of that, it had been so long, I had to go through this whole like process that I wound up just getting my license again in like July, and so I've been using what is kind of like the extra car, like the same car I used to drive back like 10 years ago, that's still kind of like sitting there.
Yeah.
So to be honest, it's not a big surprise that it like died. But yeah, it was a whole ordeal, and now I'm carless again. So I'm trying to like figure out what I'm going to do. I mean, in the grand scheme of things, it's going to be a blessing in disguise because I'm going to end up with a nicer car because I'm like forced to now like lease something. That's what I'm going to do, like just like lease a nicer car. But yeah, I got to figure that out. So yeah, dealing with that.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. I mean, cool. I look forward to hearing what you get. Um, but
We'll
yeah,
say,
I mean,
how are
I'm glad
you?
you're okay. That can be really tricky
Yeah,
safety wise
it
too.
was so embarrassing because I was driving somebody else, and it was somebody like one of the other life updates. I think I've shared with you that I've been like courting a like technical co-founder in Atlanta, and so we were meeting. And the reason I was on the highway was I was driving him home, and I kind of volunteered to drive him because we had met on Sunday, and he had to go to the airport. And so we met, we decided that we were going to meet on Sunday to kind of do some, like have a meeting. His wife dropped him off. He had all of his bags. And when we got up to like the conference room, he sat down and was like, oh my God, I forgot my corporate phone at home, like on the charger. And I was like, is that a big deal? He's like, yeah, kind of. He's like, okay, well, let's have our meeting. Let me take an Uber all the way back. Cause he called his wife, but his wife was like with the kids. And so
Yeah.
it was like, okay, I'll drive all the way back and then I'll Uber home and then I'll Uber to the airport. And so I was like, well, let me just
Right.
drive you so we could like chat and then you could Uber from your place. Um,
Oh no.
we made it like 15 minutes on the highway. And then he was like telling me it's like a life story. And in that moment, I kind of realized, I think there's something wrong with my car. Like I'm like accelerating and like, it's not like, I've never had this experience, but it doesn't seem like it's like registering. And then I'm like listening and I'm hearing like kind of like a purring sound that is faint, but I'm like, I immediately kind of start veering over to the side of the road and I was able to. So there was like no problem. But then I went into like operator mode where I was like, looked at him. I go, look, I'm so embarrassed to tell you this, but there's something wrong with my car. We have to divide and conquer. You have to get an Uber. You have to get out of here and leave me. Like, don't worry about me. I'll deal with my issue. You have an issue, like, because we're stranded on the side of the road and you need to like get out of here. And so then we kind of like had to start dividing and conquering. He like had to start like calling an Uber,
Right.
which is not like so easy to get an
On a
Uber on the highway.
Right.
So there's like a 15 minutes of him dealing with the problem. I'm calling my dad and I'm like, I'm stranded. I need like, I do have AAA. You gotta come get me. But in the grand scheme of things, it was like a cosmic moment that it was like the first time that like technical co-founders had to like deal with a like inevitable, like kind of high stress situation. And it's like, we see how each other are reacting. Like we're calm. We're not like mad. We're not like blaming each other. You know, he could totally blame me, but at the same time, should have forgot it. I shouldn't be on the highway.
Right.
Like if you
were trying to do a nice thing, like hurdles happen.
Like, I feel like it was like such a precursor to like the reality of dealing with software where it was like, I'm dealing with a problem because you weren't attentive to detail in the first place.
Yeah.
And you know that it would have been better if you just avoided this problem, but I got to deal with it. You better be nice, but like, I see maybe I'm not helping the situation by not having all the right equipment.
100%. Seeing how you do in high stress situations. No one, everyone's trying.
Yeah.
No one like, was just negligent or anything. So. So it
ended with like a handshake, and he was like, "Are you okay?" I was like, "Just leave me. Like, I'll deal with this." I was like, "It's fine. Like get out of here. Talk to you when you're back."
Yeah. Good. I mean. As good as it can be, at least.
Good, not great, but yeah, that's kind of my update. I got to deal with that now over the next couple of weeks.
Yeah. No, that's a lot, and just glad you're okay, and he's okay.
Well, what would make it a lot better if we have big successful companies, right? I want my company to be successful. I want this to be successful, rolling in dough, so then I could hopefully get a better car. But I'm gonna get like a normal car, but like aspirational. Yeah. Well, to be honest, that was kind of always my hope. I felt like I'm not like far away from kind of rolling in cash a little bit, because once my product takes off, and I feel like I'm working on a few projects that like are like on the verge, I think, you never know, but like just around the corner of, I think, like being really profitable. This being one of them, but like the other ones too, that I just felt like it would just be like a nice tail end to getting a new car, to like getting the car that I want. Whereas if I got a car today, you got to like balance like what's economically like
real life finances now.
Yeah. Like, and I was actually optimistic that I just didn't need to get a car because we had a car, and I'm not like a materialistic person. The car gets me there, but if the car doesn't get me there, then obviously I have to take on the expense. I need a car. But it is what it is.
Yeah. Well, and obviously having more money to throw at it will take more of the stress off of vision.
But that's why I'm starting to aggressive. Well, that's not the only reason why, but it puts a fire under me where I really want to start like adding to my personal brand and starting to kind of like post a lot on LinkedIn and getting noticed. And a big central point of it's not the only one. Like you saw, like I want you to be along on the ride on this, because I don't want you to feel, because part of it is I'm actually trying to do this to help this business. But a lot of that is making sure that you feel comfortable, because I'm hoping that I could help create inbound for us, because your network is not very big. So I want to push you to get a bigger network and do that. But I'm hoping that if I could start actually leveraging my network in a way that's puts Spectrum Strategies a little bit more in the forefront, but like with a twist of talking about like building businesses, I'm hoping that because I told you there's lots of different people I talk to that I'm always like hey, you said something about autism. Hey, you said
You
something
seem
autism.
interested.
Well, they think they would, but the truth is, I haven't really seen the angle because they're helping me with like my business, like LinkedIn or software. That I kind of I felt like I didn't want to like deviate from the conversation. It wasn't natural to be like, oh, let me tell you about this. But I feel like through this type of content, it opens up natural conversations over time where people are like, I think I'm hoping the call to action is I would love to talk to Sarah. That's what I'm hoping happens. Where it's like I'm just building a portal to be like, oh, I would love to talk to Sarah. And then I mean they could ask me about it, but it's more of like, yeah, let me set you up to have that conversation with Sarah to maybe make an introduction. Because a lot of this is going to be about like, I think trying to help, well, build the story of like that we want to talk to people in HR or like about neurodiversity or like anybody that's kind of interested about it.
Right. Absolutely. And you really, so it's funny. I want to be open to everyone. You never know who's going to know someone who's going to, but this sort of ties into every step we've talked about to this point, that a lot of this is trying to focus my target audience. But at the same time, you know, you don't want to like,
this is
talk to someone through
totally. This is actually what I would love to kind of get to a place where we can even talk about it on some of these meetings. That's why LinkedIn is beautiful, because the idea would be to open up a conversation or like a DM or tell them to connect with you on LinkedIn so you could get better at doing diagnostics in DMs. I'm in that situation. I don't meet with everybody, but like I'm willing to talk with people in the DMs, but I'm kind of like forthcoming with like trying to figure out the agenda before we meet. I don't want to like just meet with anybody, but like, you know, I don't know what that exactly looks like for you, but for example, if you're talking to an HR person or somebody is interested in it, it's more about like what interests you about it. To be honest, that's why we got to build the website, push them towards the website, ask them to follow the company page.
Tell me what I can do for you.
Like, or do you know anybody? Because I have a feeling it's going to be more of like they might not want to talk to you. They might want to introduce you to somebody that they think would be a good fit for the product. That's what I'm actually thinking is more of the thing where it's like, oh, let me talk to this HR director. I think that this would be a really good program for them to learn more about the business. And those are the ones that I want you to take calls with, because that's more sales.
It's more directly, a direct line to sales. It's more
it's like a qualified sales lead. That's who you need to kind of talk to. Because right now, like even when we went over like it's hard to know exactly who's a qualified sales lead because we don't have a product and you haven't sold it yet.
Right.
So you got to reach out to people in the HR space that are willing to talk with you so you could get a better sense of who the qualified sales leads are. But the quickest path to get qualified sales leads is someone who sees it and refers someone because they think they're a qualified sales lead, and then talk to that person to better understand how you could serve.
They know the background or the profile of the person better and have done the screening for you. Essentially.
If they're going to reach out to somebody who's at a bigger company that like is looking for DEI type stuff, like programs about that have that, you know, that our company already kind of like values that, you know, I feel like it's a qualified sales lead.
Yeah.
Cool. Why don't you go through, I don't know, are there any, like, how are you doing? What are your updates other than your GPTs?
Well, I was laughing because with building or trying to customize the GPTs more, they're asking me really good questions It's asking me really good questions. Knowing what are your main goals for these posts? What are your primary platforms, themes, topics? It's making me focus a lot more than I think I was on, well, why am I posting this? Who are we trying to reach? Just that the audience seemed to be everyone, and that's a bit overwhelming. And then you can't write a post for everyone. You know, you're writing a post for future clients, hopefully, or future customers. So I think I was going back and forth a little bit between, I created one for the company socials and one for my personal social. I think I've landed on sticking with the company for now. Yeah. I have to just get rid of that invisible hurdle of, I feel like I'm embarrassed to not be polished, you know? Like I see these tools and I see how they're going to take me from point A to point B, and I need to just post it publicly. And like, if people are annoyed, like I'm trying, like at least I'm trying, you know, that's not, I just, you can get stuck in this could be better forever. I think that's where I'm sort of, I appreciate us meeting because it's the kick in the butt of like, it's time to be public. It's time to show the world what you're doing. You know, it's time to not just be revising. That is painfully apparent at the moment. I do think that in maybe two or three more sessions with Debbie, I should be done with that content wise. And then it'll be on her to read through it and see how she is comfortable with a teleprompter, that kind of thing, which, you know, I'm happy to support her in as well. But then for the actual recording, I'm not going to be involved in that as much. Yeah. That's where I don't have, that's the biggest block for me recently. That like at the very, I feel like worst case scenario, no one cares, you know? That like, you know, I guess people could be like cruel or rude about it or whatever, but that just seems,
I don't think people are like that very much on
yeah,
LinkedIn.
right. That seems highly unlikely.
That people just ignore it.
Yeah.
And so that's why I think that you definitely kick in the butt. You got to do it. And once you do it, you'll realize, I think we'll do it together. Like I'm doing it. I feel the same way. One thing that I do that might help you that I even see, because you got to do it and you want to do it. So what I am doing, I don't know if we've never showed you this, is if you click on post, you could click on this button, schedule for later, and then you can schedule a post.
Mm-hmm.
And so the reason that I find that helpful is simply because it allows you to think about what your posting cadence is and not try to do things in real time, because that should be the workflow. You don't want to sit down and say, I got to post. You want to, when you feel good about posting something and it's ready, schedule it and then move on to the next one, whenever that is. So it just goes out and then you could forget about it and move on to the next one. I think that I found that even for clients, like building up the idea of doing it in real time, posting it and waiting for feedback is like a recipe for disaster. Because it doesn't even work that way in total transparency, because it like trickles in results over like 24 to 48 to like 72 hours. I mean, obviously to try to go viral, you want to try to optimize for getting results in the first few hours. But I wouldn't focus, since where you're at, I wouldn't focus so heavily on the posting. I think you should do it, but I think I would focus more on the outreach.
The networking.
Yeah. Like try to have conversations and try to get some conversations going so we could talk out more like nuances of ideal customer profiles, sales processes, and things like that.
Right.
What I wanted to kind of share with you is just kind of like thinking, well, one, this is for content purposes, because I wanted to kind of give you some structure that you could help me create better content by trying to lay out what the roadmap is of how this is going to go. I'm hoping that we can expedite this. Obviously, the time, we're a little stuck until Debbie records. But at the same time, I think we can parallel path a lot of this. So we don't need to like wait for her. So Look, we've been talking a lot about LinkedIn. That's kind of how I viewed the phase one. That's even what I'm starting to post with. Those are like a little bit of clips of like talking about your profile, talking about little nuances about like getting ready to use LinkedIn as like a source to do customer discovery. Last time, and then even what you talked about today, you will have some clips about AI agents, ChatGPT. I still feel like we're in this. So it's like, trying to bring, you know, some thoughts and ideas and like just ways to kind of think about how AI is being leveraged in your workflow and my workflow too. Because I think that this is a really interesting topic for people to understand when you're building businesses in 2025. Like you got to build agents, GPTs, but then also like even what you said, I kind of agree with you. I would start with one agent and then try to get that one good, then immediately starting to do two. I actually think that that's actually really valuable feedback on that, because the agent should be smart enough to distinguish between writing as you and writing as the company page.
Well, that's what I was wondering is, do I need both of them or should I have kept them?
The reason that you would have different is if you want different output styles. At a certain point, maybe you feel like you want to write a more polished way for yourself, and you feel like that style of the way that you like writing for yourself is not the way that you want to write for the audience. Or maybe you start thinking it's too similar.
That's exactly what happened earlier this week, is that it was asking me questions. And then I realized, well, I know how to answer that for me.
But if you're not posting anything, I think you're going to be shooting yourself in the foot of like trying to, if you're not posting anything, I think you're going to be shooting yourself in the foot to try to optimize something that doesn't like need optimizing yet. Because if you, like the reason you would have two is because you're kind of building two audiences. So it's like, I could see why you would want to distinguish it if you're in conversations with people and then you're asking them to follow the company page, and then the content being produced in both places have a very similar vibe, and your audience is only like 10, 15 people. Yeah, maybe you want to start thinking about how to be a little bit more creative with the GPTs. So the output that's coming out of Spectrum Strategies is a little bit more one way, and the ones that's coming from you is a little bit more another way. For example, you see from mine, like thinking about more like narrative format with the word I as you makes a lot of sense, right? Because it's coming from you. And then writing from Spectrum Strategies, saying we, saying like from a brand voice, being more punchy, straight to the point, maybe more statistic heavy, less narrative format. Those are stylistic decisions. But like if you're trying to do two things at once, what you're basically doing is not posting.
Right. That's
right. So
that's where I am. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're basically just not posting and like optimizing.
I mean, I'm having fun playing with it for the
I
record,
understand.
but like it's got to lead somewhere. Otherwise,
If I would start with one, I would start more from you, to be honest. I mean, well, to be honest, I think that you could use the company one, but maybe write it from more narrative format. And then you could always edit it into we if you find that that's not appropriate. But the reason I say that is I think that if you optimize it a little bit more for narrative format, I think that copy is going to wind up being more distinguishable from maybe some of the other competitors in the market who, when we looked at it, seemed more like stat heavy, like kind of doing a little bit more like what you were doing, originally, just like did you knows, facts. But I think if you start telling more stories, things like that, and even use some of the history from the videos to kind of leverage some stories or things like that.
Right. Is this from for my brand page or for the company brand page? For the company, use stories from Debbie's coaching.
I think you should do it stories for both.
Okay.
I just think that would the reason I say that is because like, okay, I like to anchor this in people. You reach out to Sally from HR. You open up a conversation. Sally starts seeing that Sarah is posting. You have a conversation, and then you ask her to follow the company page. Stories are going to be more entertaining to Sally than did you know facts.
Right. Everyone can jump on Google and figure out.
Yeah. Especially because Sally just met Sarah. She knows Sarah's doing this. You might as well impress her with multiple stories and hitting her from both angles of entertainment. At a certain point, you might get a little bit more scale. You might close some clients. You might have more people following the company page that you might say, you know what? I think these posts are getting a little too much stories. Why don't we shift to facts? Because little nuggets go a long way if we're trying to like speak one to many with like 30 different people who might not be reading all of this, but you're not there yet. So I would actually focus maybe more on trying to entertain through stories and information. And just think through maybe like an angle of what you're talking about as you versus what you're talking about as the company. Because as you can show a little bit more vulnerability on like entrepreneurial like stuff that you're working on, that you wouldn't talk about on the company page. I would imagine it's more focused on,
it's a personal reaction to trying to do this. I mean, I can be transparent. You know, we're being transparent on here. I can.
But I think that that's actually more interesting on your page. Like you could share my post and then give your take on it to your network. The reason is because think about Sally. If Sally meets you, she's gonna like you. She's gonna like know what you're doing. Probably find that interesting. But if she does choose to follow the company page, like you don't want to talk about the like problems with Shopify, even though it's like relevant to the company. It's not like the right brand angle.
Right.
Right. So it's like actually interesting if you say, hey, I've been learned a lot about Shopify. Here's some of the things that I am finding, make it a really useful tool to like build a course product. That's interesting for a lot of people to learn about you, but not so relevant for Spectrum Strategies company page.
I think this, I mean, one of the questions I guess I've been struggling with is like, what's personal, what's professional, you know, like I'm not trying to be everyone's friend, but that can be part of the distinction between, I mean, sure, don't get me wrong, I'd love to be everyone's friend, but the distinction between the company page and my page, mine can be more as if I'm talking to friends, whereas the company, I might want to keep it much more business focused.
Yeah.
I'm not going to put
So I totally agree. I believe that you could probably create an agent that can do both of those things.
Okay.
With a distinction. So even in the knowledge base to say, hey, we're going to use, this is the Spectrum Strategies agent. You're going to be writing for Sarah, and then you're also going to be writing for the company, and then start maybe managing one and trying to make it better. And look, if you then find that you're posting and you're trying to optimize your workflow and you want to separate it out, you can do that at any time. It's like really easy to do that. I just feel like you got to focus more on getting things scheduled.
Okay. No, I hear you. I definitely hear you. Another fear is I don't have enough to say yet. I think I'm not confident in the current state of the scripts, and I don't have a background in the neurodiverse world. So, I mean, I can talk about my reaction to this process, but when I was mentioning, like, I'm just trying to think of more to feed to these chat GPTs to try to have more to say.
What's your knowledge base to the GPT?
Or what? It's a lot about my background. It's a lot about Debbie's one-on-one coaching, and then our new initiative mission. That there's a masterclass coming.
So, but I don't understand why on the individual side, I think you got a lot to talk about, right? I understand, because that's like your life, right? Like it's personal branding. So I feel like it's a lot about your history, your ventures in the corporate America world, mission-oriented work, entrepreneurialism, working with family, learning systems management, learning about the neurodiverse space, why you think it's important. This is all just personal stories. The company side, I hear you. But I think that the AI could help a lot with this, because I think that you could talk a lot about hiring practices in companies, like the challenges that companies face with, or like talking about DEI, like things about DEI, which is a very like heavy topic. You could talk about
we can't call it DEI anymore.
You could talk about inclusion, right? And like, and even talk about like organizations and like how they're navigating this like inclusion ideology. This is the stuff that I just feel like that's what I mean, like when I say narrative format, where I just feel like you want to give Sally something to like dig into that's a little bit more than a stat. So like, speaking about, and to be honest, you might not actually want to talk about that as much as you, like the controversial takes of, not controversial, but just like what's happening a little bit today with, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And how it's going through a rebrand. But does that mean that the ideas underlying it aren't still relevant?
They're still highly important. Yeah.
Yeah. So I feel like my point is, I feel like giving the GPT those
topics
to say, hey, here are some ideas for the company page, like that I want to kind of explore in this writing style. You could then start playing to kind of like showcase some use cases. I would even, if you want an exercise to just keep yourself accountable, create a spreadsheet and have like 3 posts for you and 3 posts to the company page and send me that. So then we could at least go back and forth on the comments of like what I thought about it. So you could kind of, and maybe give your knowledge base. So we could kind of work toward building a GPT that's having an output that you feel more confident in. Because if you feel like you are struggling on the ideation part of it, I just view that as, well, I think we got to just do a little bit more with the GPT setup.
Okay. Yeah.
You're going to be struggling. I mean, I understand that you want to have a polished taste, but like, let's not we got to work towards getting the GPT to give you something that's 80% of the time there. So you're spending more time on the editing side of things, and also like coming up with angles to leverage. That's
a big part of the muscle I haven't practiced yet, or that seems more daunting than it will. Like, you just rattled a list off for both, right? Yeah. Like, that's something I was sitting here going like, wait, so it's just, sure. I think it's a little more intuitive for you right now. And it's wonderful for us to talk, for me to hear you say things like that. And then for me to think, okay, I can do this.
Yeah. So that's fine. So let's work through even this week on getting a better GPT, going back and forth on the knowledge base. You could share the GPT that you're building with me so I could see what the output is. But I would love for you to like give me the knowledge base and then put like some posts in a spreadsheet and then that you think are good. And then we could kind of go back and forth on like some feedback on like how to make this a little bit better. I'm also curious, again, I don't want to push you towards doing what I'm doing. But like, what is, I don't know what your polished style is. You want it to be polished. That means you need like a writing style that you feel comfortable with. Right. So it's like, you need some examples of like things that you think are good.
Right. Right.
So at least that's why I'm kind of pushing to get something that's good so that I can get to, maybe I'm going to say, I don't think it's good, but like, that's fine. At least I gotta know what you think is good. I don't really know. Like, do you see my writing style? It's very narrative format, and I'm telling a story with like a beginning, a hook. I could give you my knowledge base so you could get outputs like mine very easily, right? Because I have like writing styles, but I don't want to push you into a corner of saying you got to write like me, because I want you, you should feel proud. You're going to post more if you feel proud of what you're like, what the output is, if you feel like it's good.
I think that's exactly it, that I'm not proud of the scripts yet. And I think that's part of the like.
Yeah, but the scripts are different than the writing styles.
But I do think it's hard for me. Sorry, yes, we're talking about 2 different things.
Yeah.
But I do think it's hard for me to like.
But you understand the scripts are just a knowledge base.
Yeah. And I know they're going to get there. I know they're going to.
Yeah, I know, but I wouldn't even focus on that because the scripts are going to get there, but that's Debbie's baby.
Not yet.
I know that, but I'm saying at the end of the day, the point is Debbie needs to make sure that those sound good because those are her words that are going to be seen by people.
Right.
Right.
And that's
the words that we're talking about that are going to be seen by you is a different writing style.
Right.
It's also a different format because you're not on video saying it. So the flow of saying something with written word is different. I think this is really important for you to understand, because even look at the post that I'm saying, a lot of this wouldn't sound good if I was reading it out loud. It's purposely choppy because we're writing for the platform, right? Mm-hmm. You got to start with a hook, because at the end of the day, you only have this long to see. So
to get someone to care and read.
Yeah, well, they have to press show more if it's more than 2 sentences. So the first 2 sentences are the most important thing. And then you need to kind of say a story. And then, at that point, it's going to be choppy is kind of my point purposely. So
Oh yeah. I completely comprehend the fact that reading, if different forms of expression hit
so my point
differently.
is I think that I think that the scripts are good enough to pull inspiration from, and then you just need your writing style, and the GPT needs both to then come out with an output that I think that you'll think is like good.
Okay. Do you think it's worth putting in the scripts in draft form just to get, because like a lot of the content's good. It's maybe not
Yeah,
as polished as we want to sound, but like for content, it would be helpful for the chat GPT to have this.
100%.
Yeah.
That's why
Yeah.
I think that you're having problems with the company page GPT. I was
Yeah.
like, what do you mean? You have literally a whole knowledge base of good
Yeah.
information. Then the GPT needs to know writing styles
Yeah.
to be able to leverage with context who you are in relation to the script, and then what's the output style of a narrative format. That then I think if you prompt it with just a simplistic, I want to talk about hiring practices and what I've learned about X, Y, and Z, boom, it's going to pull from all those places and talk about your background, talk about the part from the
Connections.
script in a writing style designed like for LinkedIn that you're going to be like, hey, I think I could stand out amongst like these regular like HR people. And I don't need to overdo it. Like I'm going to post 6 days a week now, but you don't need to do that. You you could post like 2 times a week or
I
3
think
times a
as
week.
it becomes a more well-oiled machine, that'll be a lot less daunting. I mean, I can
Yeah.
see how easy it is for you now that you're set up the way
Yeah.
you're set up.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah,
Also, I've been doing this for a long time of creating posts for people.
sure.
So I'm primed to do this, but I don't do this for my clients. I don't post like 6 times a week.
Yeah.
Mostly because of the approval process that I have to go through that I'm not, there's a blocker. But for
Right.
you, once you get your setup and you're feeling good, that's how I feel. It's like I have like literally like 30 posts. It's like so easy to like bang
Right.
these out. And it's more about like walking through the day, thinking about like a lesson learned or like an idea,
Right.
do it and then get my output. So it's like, how
Right.
do we just kind of get you there? That would be my
So
go.
you like, right, if something interesting, whether it's a conversation with someone or whether something interesting happens to you, like then that's something you would just throw into the machine later, and then
Yeah,
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 which is
exactly.
that's much less pressure than
Yeah, and that's what makes it good too, because it's authentic. Because it's like I actually have like a real thing that I think would be interesting for like my network to share with my network.
it's your
It's just a
experience.
daunting idea to think of a structure that's gonna like get people to click on LinkedIn. But the reason that they would click is because the concept is thoughtful. Like it's true. Like I'm
Well, that's how I
choosing.
felt about that
Yeah,
beach
today.
sunset. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
like literally that's like a true story. And it's like I have the footage to do it. And so yeah, that's a good idea, like a good version of it. Like I remember that idea and the concept I fed to the GPT to then get it. And I still kind of edited it
Sure,
slightly.
sure.
Um, but to be honest, like I have the writing styles in the knowledge base of knowing how to write like in what I want for LinkedIn.
Yeah. Well, and even just the difference between LinkedIn and Instagram, that's something I want to be able to parse out for the GPT monster as well. Or do you think they'll just know that?
The
I mean,
GPT.
what's a shorter, what do you call it?
The
AI?
GPT monster.
The monster that's going to save my soul.
Let's just keep it at that. The GPT monster.
Okay.
I don't know. I think I could be wrong with this, and I think you just got to do it and see. I think this is my point: is that if you optimize it for writing for LinkedIn, I think that copy in this space, in your space, might play well on Instagram.
You don't think they'll be way too long?
I don't know, because Instagram, you have to also have an image.
Right, right.
So I think that it's so visual that I think most people that discover you are going to discover you based off the image. That's why I said I wouldn't necessarily start with Instagram, because LinkedIn is easy because you don't need an image.
Right.
You can put images if you want with posts, but you could just write and like, stand out based off of like storytelling. And it's a low barrier to entry. If you start moving to LinkedIn or to Instagram, my point is, I think that then if you, let's say you do this for 2 weeks and you get 6 good copy, well, now all of a sudden the way to apply that to Instagram, I would say, is more about finding a good visual to pair with whatever you said, that then if you do get people to follow you on Instagram and they click through, maybe you edit it down. But I don't know. This is kind of depends on what you say, because I feel like if you're trying to drive value in like a storytelling way that's like actionable and helpful, it's like, that's why I feel like you stand out. Cause it's like, what's the point of like such a dense topic on Instagram? Like you're not going to show pictures of like autistic children, right? Like you're not going to like show pictures. And it's like, yeah, you could do like, did you know stats, but I don't feel like that packs enough depth to actually be of value. So the way I'm thinking about it is, if you do that in the captions and then pair it with an image, maybe taking some of the words of the making carousels out of some of the captions and maybe adding in some did you know stats to even add more depth. The idea is that then all of a sudden you're taking something that already started as like a good story and creating more visuals to create more depth, that then people might actually start scrolling through, and your brand is more about like what you're creating on the newsfeed is a lot of like well done concepts and posts that if somebody spent time going through, they would feel more educated on topics, which I think is that's how I envision you standing.
That's what I want.
Right. So it's like, well, just start by writing that stuff and then pair it with the visual. And then if you do both, I can see how like then, well, I don't think we went through some examples. I didn't see anybody else doing it with such a specificity that way.
Yeah. Thing I also could do is ask Debbie, it doesn't have to be a specific cadence, but when, on our calls, what happened that week, anything, and just listen for if there's anything I think I can run with, just any interesting client stories that stood out to her. Obviously we'd keep names and everything identifiable out of it, but
I think that's a good example of something that could be a great company page post, because if you get the context and it's authentic and she tells you a story about how somebody ran into a situation at work and then this is how Debbie handled it, and then you fed that raw context to an output that's hooked with a story. This is what I'm saying.
Cool.
Yeah, I know. That's what I think is going to be a good company page post. Yeah. And I don't think that would be a great post for you, because you see, so it's like now for Sally, she gets your journey, and then also you're educating her that now all of a sudden you're changing her behavior slowly on like, hey, this is like a like I see like a high standard, like a brand standard that that Sarah and Spectrum Strategies are kind of creating. I understand what she's doing.
There's a
I understand how they're helping train people through good storytelling.
Yeah, I think that's much more digestible. I do like the idea of having, like, by our next call, I have 3 for me, 3 for the company, and my question is, do I post them and then we talk about them, or do I show them to you and then
I would to expedite this, I would love to just help you set up the GPT, because I can give you knowledge base. I'll give it to you after this call. I'll send it to you of like good LinkedIn output.
Or okay.
Well, well, I'm going to give you my knowledge base. You could just mimic my knowledge base. I'm not saying
you can tweak it as
you can tweak it as you need it. But my point is the knowledge, like, okay, so the knowledge base, let me just like show you quickly what I'll give you after the call so you can go through it. But I think it might help you come out with output that's a little bit closer to you feeling like it's a little bit more impressive.
Because right now I'm getting
so my knowledge base is I have 3 things. I have instructions. Oh, sorry, you can't see that. I have I have 3 PDFs in my knowledge base. I have 4 GPT models. So that's like instructions of what I want it to know. I have writing copy. So this is like a PDF of good examples of copy that I think is optimized for like writing styles of LinkedIn. I'll send you both of these so you could have that and then get outputs like mine. And then I have a copy of my email onboarding series. So whenever people download my software, I wrote a series of 18 emails that's delivered in like what I hope is like very value driven content about LinkedIn. I envision you updating the scripts. So you would have, or your scripts. So it has maybe another one that's about you, or maybe you're, to be honest, I just kind of like talk to it about me. And so it kind of like puts me, I don't know how you did it, but I tell it about me. So it kind of understands me. And then I have instructions, writing samples, and then deep context of like proprietary information that I've worked on separately that it knows like enough about LinkedIn. And then I'm feeding it output. Look, write a LinkedIn post about growing your brand.
Can you shift the screen over because our pictures are, yeah, there we go. Okay, write a LinkedIn post about growing your brand through networking. Absolutely.
So this is about me. I mean, it's true. So it's optimized for a hook. And then it kind of tells a story with a narrative. And then it asked if I want a carousel or anything else. And then I could say, what I usually do after that is give me a few options for hooks. And then I might even give it some context of like ones for, I want something more like sparks curiosity or a little bit more direct, depending on kind of the story that I'm telling. That's my creative taste of it. Like, you know, something that's more punchy if I don't want this. Like, because this is what like bold statements versus relatable questions.
So you could mix and match.
Because I think, in my opinion, the way that you'll stand out really quickly is this is what all the LinkedIn influencers do is they hyper focus on those first 2 sentences. The story is important. So obviously it starts with the concept and the idea. Just think about like YouTube, right? Like, you know, YouTube, obviously the video is the most important thing, but you also need a good title and thumbnail. Right. Like, because if nobody clicks on it, it doesn't matter how good the video is. So in the same concept for LinkedIn, it's you have to focus on the first 2 lines. Because if no one, it doesn't matter how good the story is if no one does that. Creativity comes there. And then your story matters. Like, how good are you at telling stories? That's a little more about concepts. That's more about understanding your audience. That's more about like thinking through like what's the message you're trying to convey at the end of the day, right? So think about my post today. When I wrote that, the message I'm trying to convey is the idea that I learned that it's like the destination is absolutely not the point of this. It's you got to like fall in love with the process, because when you get to the destination, you kind of just can't stop thinking about not only like all of the things you had to do to get here, but all the things that you have to do. Next. Yeah. It's like you can't even enjoy that, the fact that this is exactly what you asked for, because you're too focused on what you actually like is the process. I thought that was a really big aha moment for me when it came to business, because it made me realize like, okay, you know, you got to like what you get. Yeah, like you got to like fall in love with this. I remember thinking about that a lot, like with my client work, where it's like, okay, I actually like want to enjoy working with my clients, like, you know, choosing clients wisely, not like even for, I took that lesson. And when I came to Atlanta, I got rid of a lot of my clients and made less money for a while, because I kind of wanted to like focus on the parts of the business that I enjoyed, which was certain clients and growing their businesses with them. And then also building software and networking in Atlanta. I thought that was going to lay the groundwork for what I actually wanted to do. which was to build community and like work with good people and kind of stop what I was doing, which was ferociously talking to anybody who would talk to me on LinkedIn and
Yeah,
I could just work with as many people as possible.
You have less energy for the parts you actually want to do, then you're doing them worse. It can get messy if you don't focus.
Yeah. And it's like important to kind of realize like what are the parts of the process that you actually really enjoy? What are you good at? It's like a reflective.
I'm learning editing scripts is a pain point for me. It is almost done, and I am much more excited about what I can do with branding and networking.
Yeah, and I think you'll be good at it. So look, here's some curiosity. Everyone tells you to build a brand. No one tells you how to make people care, right?
Yeah. Oh, I like that.
So you see what I'm saying is it kind of gives me some different angles, like relatability, curiosity. I would hyper focus on this, depending on what you think works. Because once you know the hook, now all of a sudden you can see, well, how does the hook in your editing flow with the next part of it?
Put these at the top and then tell your story.
Yeah. And so you want to hyper focus on the hook and then tell your story. And then have the GPT kind of write the rest of it. And then, that's not networking in the business card sense. I'm talking about personal. So what I would say, and this is kind of how I write it, to be honest, I'm showing you the secret sauce is I'm not the structure wise. I think this is good, but I think it lacks me in it. And the reason is because I literally prompted, I didn't give it anything. So It's giving me such a, what I mean by that is I'm trying to brand my stuff where I want every single post to be like about Colin, essentially, like something related.
It's your brain.
Exactly. So it's like important. Like I want, because I feel like the way that I'll be able to, like, I want everyone to follow my post and then be like, okay, this is like a Colin specific post. If it's about Sarah, it's about his beach. Even if it is about like networking, I got to like angle in some story about like how I used to be versus how I was. So in this case, if I was trying to optimize this, it gives me a structure, and it does say here's where it's trying to like give me some person there. I was ghostwriting LinkedIn, trying to figure out where I fit. No brand, no leverage this team. Then I flipped the script. I stopped chasing, started attracting. I'm kind of trying to like work. This is why I try to start with the concept that's original. So then it's easier to give the concept of like what I'm trying to say so we can feed it in. But if I'm trying to back into it based off of this, I would probably start saying that could be a good post. One of the things that I struggled with when I was originally networking on LinkedIn was the concept of like active listening, which I know it's like one of my big things. I'd probably make it a post like that because I used to get people on calls and then like talk a lot about all the things that I could do. And I found that I didn't close business that way. And I learned that, because that's kind of what this is saying. Like I stopped chasing, started attracting. Like what are examples of that? I would want to like give people examples of how I came to that conclusion. I started broadcast, started connecting, I started creating content. I didn't really do this. I would focus on these two and basically say, hey, I used to get on calls. I had my pitch deck. I like could go over all the different ancillary services. And, I did that, but then I didn't close any business. Once I stopped doing that and I started listening and then positioning, like solving people's problems based off of what they said they wanted to do, I started closing.
More useful. And then
and I started having much more productive conversations and creating better relationships with people because they felt like we started working together immediately. Cause it's like, well, then we're starting to like, if they say they want to create content and I'm like, well, I'm really good at for this example, I can tell in this where it's like people are interested in AI, but they don't really necessarily know how do you use AI in workflows. Well, if I could now start saying, well, let me show you how I do it. And like, let's talk about how you could do it. Well, then it's really easy to close that business because they want to keep going because they kind of set the stage with what they wanted.
Right.
But sure, I could also teach you how to use AI on LinkedIn and potentially, help you use Sales Navigator and build websites, but you're not asking for that. So
you're meeting the actual need and customizing it per the conversation, per the client.
Exactly.
I mean, I appreciate being able to come to this meeting and tell you I feel stuck, and it's not, and we can talk about it, and we can and figure out ways to get, like, that's not a good feeling, but it's comfortable knowing that that's like I can bring that to you, and then we'll pivot based on that. not even pivot, but just like focus on that's really meaningful.
You just created that'll definitely be a clip one day, and I will post about a story about how I used to not make people feel that way, and I've learned that how to make people feel that way,
because it
because
makes
that's how
me
you
show up to our meetings because I can be open with you.
right. So this is why once you get a good writing style, it's really easy to I think create content that you'll feel proud of from your personal brand, because you got lots of things to say. And then maybe the Spectrum Strategies version of that might take a little bit of time, or figure out your writing style. But yeah.
Well, that may progress with time too. Like what I think is great today,
Yeah.
I'm sure I'll tweak in a month or whatnot.
Absolutely.
And that's fine.
Yeah. Cool. Well, look,
yeah,
we're still on this. We're still on this.
Yes.
So that's kind of my point. I feel like we've kind of moved off of LinkedIn, and we're still very much in this. I still feel like we could kind of send another session or two on this, like building the GPT. And then I would love to get to a place where then you're posting, so we can maybe go back to this a little bit, because hopefully you're getting some results, conversation. Sure. Like we're talking a little bit more about starting to build, jumping to the end, the pipeline, but you could create a little bit more conversations. To me, I feel like this is the stuff that is like interesting to kind of get going on, because I think it's relatable, and I think that we could kind of anchor a lot of conversation in like building the business on LinkedIn and using AI and like trying to think through the customer discovery element of it. I know that you're doing this outside of the meetings with me. That's fine. We talked about not wanting to do that, to be honest, in these meetings. That's why I don't want to focus on it that much. But I got to push you, Debbie, to finish this part up.
She's back in Florida, and so we're going to have more. Well, she made time. Yeah.
So that's fine. So I don't mind doing this for a little bit, but I'm hoping that at a certain point we could kind of tag team and start things in parallel, where we could do some of this. But I'm going to be honest, this is going to be really easy. I don't really think that I understand that it like sounds technical, it's complicated, but like I feel like we could bang this out. I said 30 days with Debbie, but I think we could do it in like 2 weeks. Because the reason is because especially if you have agents, like I think that I'm not saying it's going to be perfect, but I'm going to say very quickly, we're all going to get to a place where it's like, Debbie, this is way better than what you currently have. Can we go live? Yeah. And also it's going to be helpful for you in your LinkedIn to kind of be able to feature that on your profile and like get that going. So there's a lot of reasons to want to push this forward, even if it's not perfect, because we could always keep changing it. Like we could clearly create more web pages, create blog posts. We will use the website more once it's alive than she does today. Anyway, so it's like part of the go live is to be able to get quickly to like, let's set up more pages. Let's like use the website to think through how we could, do more campaigns. Klaviyo, remember like the email marketing side. We don't need that as an example for go live, because she doesn't even have an email service provider today. So if we're not really like, she doesn't use emails, does she?
She has a roadmap at Roadmap.
Oh, she uses Gmail.
Yeah,
but I'm talking about like mass automation of email newsletter.
She doesn't use those. Yes, correct.
Right. So it's like I feel like there's a lot of things to talk about within websites. Let's just say that we could leverage in marketing, but saying, okay, you have some people, maybe we could, and she has customers, maybe we could kind of like start sending out like a monthly newsletter, and like you want to start trying to. The reason you would do that is because you might want people in your thing to say, hey, like sign up through our website for our marketing so we can get email addresses. Like right now we can't really do that on our website because there's no reason to ask people to sign up through the website based off of the way it's structured. It would be confusing. And then also we're not sending out emails. So my point is that we're here, you're working on this. Once you're done with this, there's a lot to talk about here, but I also feel like a lot of this we could kind of do we could review things in the meetings, but I actually feel like a lot of this we could kind of do separately on the
Behind the
side.
scenes, yeah.
Yeah, we could maybe have one session where I could then train you on how to use it. But like
Yeah.
the point of Shopify is it's so easy that like you could start thinking through how to leverage it as
Yeah.
well. And that's kind of the end goal here. So, you know, we can
Oh no,
talk
I
about
have.
it.
I know I'll have questions about Shopify,
Yeah.
but I'm not scared of it because, right, like I trust that they're a well implemented or set up company.
Absolutely. It's so
I'm not worried
this
about that.
this marketing sales, this is so specific to Spectrum Strategies that this is business strategy that we need to talk through this because I don't have all the answers. We got to
Right, we have to think through it.
doing it together is what's going to create the momentum. This is kind of like a standard operating procedure.
Right, it
You
needs
have
to
questions, but like we don't really have that much. There's tried and true best practices of, how to.
I think the
How
hardest
Trino
thing is
addresses.
going to be the aesthetic, making sure
Sure.
everyone's
Yeah,
on
that it
board with
looks
the
good, that
aesthetic.
we pick images. That's what I'm saying. I do envision us spending 2 to 3 sessions on this for sure. Really diving into those aesthetics and like kind of making progress outline. Like the way I envision it, just so you understand, is like I gave you that kind of like, bare like bare minimum just to show you that I did in literally 30 minutes. I kind of wanted to just prove a point by like, hey, look, the website's up. About how fast this can go once we have the product. That is down, that website.
I tried to get into it
The reason being is because it gives you like, you could set up another one. I could do it again, but I have that. Now the way Shopify works is it's going to cost, because you could set up for free for like 7 days. And for like, I think it's like 7 days. And then it's $1 a month for 3 months. So the moment I start paying, we're on like,
I don't want to pay. We're not ready yet. We're close. We're close.
But that's why I don't want to pay, because it's like, well, then we're just eating into. I mean, it's only $1, but like, it's just
I don't want to use
dormant.
Yeah.
Because if we don't really have anything, the moment we have something, we'll pay $1, we'll turn that back on, and then we'll start using these sessions to work through that quickly. Try to get into a go live. And then I'm hoping, to be honest, that you kind of start making a little bit of progress on these 2 things that we could then start talking while we're going through this, even in some of these sessions, about more broad marketing and sales. The reason I say that is because what I'm trying to do in these sessions is to try to create clips where people are going to understand more about the product and not, or like the product of what we're trying to accomplish, and not the inner workings, operations, and business, because it's not as relevant. I'm not saying that we can't have some clips about this type of stuff, the aesthetic, the DNS, like, what the details.
That's specific to our company. That's not generalizable.
It's not going to resonate with people. And the way that I envision actually trying to actually use this as like a tool to grow is if we are talking a lot about our ICP, conversations that we're in, our sales process, content, like creating content, posting content, reviewing how it's performing, iterating on like what's value, like what do we want to do, even like your vulnerabilities of like not necessarily knowing how to organize things, or like what do I do to transition, like this person said this, what do I say here? I actually find that to be super interesting content, because not only are they learning through you, but they are watching you do the work. And when we're talking about the ICP and like what we're trying to talk about, it'll keep reminding them that we're like in the neurodiverse space with corporate training. And if I can kind of keep posting about that, that's where I think more people will start being like, I kind of want to, like, I would love to talk to Sarah, or like, do you want to make an introduction? Or maybe they reach out to you saying like, I know Colin, like I saw you, or at least at that point, you would feel more comfortable sharing that as part of your content strategy, because we're not talking about like inner secrets here. It's talking about like
me learning how to do this.
Yeah. And that's going to be interesting for like Sally of the HR, because it's like, oh, I kind of met Sarah. I see her talking about wanting to like learn about LinkedIn. That's someone interesting to me. I see what she's doing. That's where I actually feel like we could really start, if we do that pretty consistently, in 90 days, have like a pretty decent sized audience, especially if you are simultaneously thinking about how to elevate the creativity on your account and also the company account. Because I think the main call to action, some people might not comment for an introduction, but they might follow the company page and they might follow you just to kind of like see what's the lay of the land. It's kind of interesting at that point.
I've been the client on that side doing the same exact thing. Right. Just curious if anything continuing to be interesting will come up, and then I want to be aware of it. I think that now, at least with the first 3 on there, we're at a point where next steps are I need to come to you with questions or specific examples of where things are at. What I mean by that is, like, you've shown me Sales Navigator. Like, I have the tools I need to get started. I just need to come
to take on platform action.
Say that again. I think
you have to take on platform action.
Yep.
Inputs create outputs, and your outputs are nothing because your inputs are nothing.
Right.
The formula. So how do we?
I haven't been just like sitting doing nothing, but
I'm not saying
that. I'm saying that for myself.
Yeah, I understand. But look, you got to crawl before you walk, before you run. So we've been crawling. I want to help you walk with these GPTs. And then you're understanding a Sales Navigator to start creating some inputs, because I actually view a lot of that as marketing and sales. I'm actually okay with you not getting outputs, but I would love for you to bring those to the sessions to say, hey, I reached out to 10 people and nobody's responded to me. What did you say? Who are they? Start analyzing it with me so we can kind of start figuring out how to be more conversion specific. And I actually find that to be incredibly compelling content, because that's the reality of like business, which is that I tried something, it didn't work, help, let's think this through, let's iterate, let's improve, and let's see how we go from 0 to 1 conversation to 3 conversations to a discovery call to what happened to pivoting, and like showcase that process.
Yeah, absolutely. I am a little weird about, like, I wouldn't want someone posting about a conversation with me without my knowledge. So is there a way we can chat about people without maybe using their name? Maybe what I can do is like bring clips of the conversation without any identifiable information. We'll see. Or I can just explain the situation.
Let's cross that bridge when it comes. It kind of depends, to be honest, on what they say. Because okay, how do I explain this to you? A lot of this, when it comes to like, is like the mechanics are incredibly repetitive. I know that like it sounds like it might not be, but it's incredibly repetitive. You find somebody, you try to open, you send a connection request, you open the conversation, and then they kind of respond, and then we have to talk about like how to transition it. I don't really think that you're going to probably have a lot of questions so much for me on like the connection request, because you understand the target market as best as I can. You might talk to me on a high level of like who we should go after. And we might change that. But my point is all of those people are just raw data at that point, because it's like, who really knows? Once you have a connection request and then you have an opener, at that point, it's still so like broad that we don't really need to pull up the name. You can say that this person said this. What would you say?
Right.
He works in this space. Yeah, I mean, we can be really broad at that.
Yeah.
What will happen is eventually, I'm hoping we can have a more in-depth conversation about preparing for the call, and then also like eventually preparing for your ability to have getting comfortable and be uncomfortable about like pitching something that you've never done. And again, that to me is kind of where we want to go. That has nothing to do with the person. It's more about you. And like, how do you envision extracting out, like, how do you make that person feel comfortable, especially considering in this space, I don't really know who you're selling to yet. So it's like, how do you extract out the pain points to somebody? I don't know. Kind of depends on who you're on the phone with. I envision you talking to a lot of people initially that like are not going to go anywhere, but we're going to learn from that. And I even feel like in those situations, that's going to be interesting content without needing to say their name. You can maybe just say where they worked at, what they did. I don't even think it's that big of a deal, to be honest, to pull them up. I mean, we don't need to necessarily use that part of the clip. I understand, but it's context dependent. But you might have a
Yeah.
really nice conversation with somebody who's really nice, and if you pull them up and you're speaking really positively about them, and then we just transition to talking about like business, I feel like we're giving them a shout out as being like a really great person, right? And we're not even talking about them. We're talking about like your thoughts on what you learned from them on like the market conditions associated with their business. So it's like not even about them. You might find somebody that you're like, hey, this person was not very nice. And then maybe we don't pull them
Close
up.
connection. Yeah. No, I'm not going to say anything bad about anyone. I wouldn't be comfortable doing that.
Well, you'll see it. You might.
Well, I'm not going to publicly
Remind you
blast
about it.
anyone on our calls that unless they're just aggressive, like hostily. No.
I found people are typically pretty nice.
Yeah, no, especially for this kind of thing. Like,
Yeah.
right. If they don't have time, they don't have time, but they're not going to tell me like, go to hell.
Yeah, but your ability to also get good at this.
Yeah.
This is to be honest, like going to be our never ending content pipeline, but I actually find that this will be the most interesting because there's a lot to talk about here. And it's also, I don't really have all the answers right now of like how, like what makes the most sense. Cause at that point, it becomes like really creating a business, right? Like what, and also going back to like, what do you like doing? Like, what do you not like doing? How good are your GPTs where you feel like you have a good handle on building a pipeline? Or what else do you need to do to kind of get support on creating more referrals? Because like we talked about before, if you find that it eventually, based off of your target market, like you've had enough customer discovery calls, you're building brand, you're having conversations, and you don't really want to do outreach on Sales Navigator anymore because you just don't feel like it's the best bang for your buck. I would say that that's where, like we had spoken about this, maybe you're at a place where you might want to start reaching out more strategically with people that are in this space. So it's not like blind outreach anymore. It's more of like a collaborative partnership. That's where I'm at, to be honest, with my business. It's like I don't even pay for Sales Navigator anymore because I don't want to talk to strangers anymore. It's like I realize I've done it for so many times, but it's not the best bang for my buck versus networking in person, being strategic, and then trying to like use LinkedIn as a way to stay in touch with people to kind of like, follow along with like what I'm doing and what they're doing. So I would imagine at that point you could get a lot of followers and get a lot of people who might want to connect with you, and like going to spaces and like building your network slowly, but doing more targeted outreach to people who you think might be like good for creating content with or something like that. Because doing that and finding a collaborative opportunity with someone who already has 2,000 followers of your target market and being able to chop up content, you find is like a more shortcut to getting 300 people to follow the brand.
You're using each other's network in that.
Yeah. And that's actually where I feel like trying to bring that type of strategy talk to, hey, I met this person. And to be honest, I believe that that's going to happen naturally. We'll see if I'm right, but I believe that's going to happen naturally. You keep trying to, start by just being authentic, trying to create brand, reaching out to whoever you can, going through a lot of like awkward conversations. Eventually, especially in this space, I would imagine people might start noticing you, and then you might meet a few people who say, you know what, I want you to meet this person. And then you meet that person, and then an opportunity comes along to do, that person might not be able to like buy the program or might not be your core ICP, but from a marketing and sales point of view, they might be pretty helpful in your ability to help like grow the brand. And then that's where, to be honest, that's where you'll shine, because Debbie has nothing to do with that. But that's kind of key for like long-term success here, to get more exposure on the brand side of things and think through how do you facilitate like running those types of campaigns.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
I would say a stretch goal is to see if we could get to this by fall. That would be my desire. If you could do this by the end of the summer. So it's like, if you can kind of have this ideally let's say May, but you start, or, another month or so, but you start kind of posting. So by summer, you start really like finding a little bit of traction. Then I don't think it's unreasonable to say that by like August, September, October, people are starting to notice, and wanting to, support.
Yeah, work with us or distributor. Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's exciting. It's the path seems laid out clearly. It's just, pivoting as things come up.
Yeah.
Not pivoting. I keep saying that. Problem solving, because every individuals, people are going to have custom needs or
Yeah.
Yeah.
So one thing that I just wanted to kind of clarify with you, you are going to have a studio do the recording. Do they do video editing? What's the process of turning around the raw footage to productionalized versions to upload? Like, do they do that? Or are we going to do that?
They offer that as a service. My understanding was we were not going to ask for that. We were just going to ask for all the raw video, and then we were going to do it.
We can do it. It depends on how, like,
it might be wiser time wise to have them do it if it's not.
Because so I don't think this is very complicated video editing because we don't need to like overdo it, but we have to. I'm curious to know what their costs are associated with that. We could always outsource that to people, like, and get video editors to do it, but I don't. But at a certain point, depending on how, like, when this, because it's like it's how, like, what's their turnaround of it, and now I'm starting to think if they're sitting there and they work with Debbie and like they're doing it fast, the difference in price that you're saving might not be worth it for the amount, like, because I actually believe that once we get this up, we could start making money, and so to save, like, even if it's like a $1,500.
I'd rather stay on my course than get derailed. And granted, I do want to like be comfortable video editing. I think it would be a good skill for me to just have in my back pocket for social media. For
this video editing, if you're going to do a teleprompter type style, and Debbie's the barometer for like go live, I would say that we want to make sure that she approves this ASAP. That it might be better to have them do that, depending on what the costs are, because we could bring in somebody and maybe save some money, but then Debbie has to approve it. You will learn video editing, but this isn't the video editing you want to get like good at, because this is client service based video editing versus your own creative taste editing.
Yeah.
And if they offer it and they're sitting there and they say that they could turn our whole thing around in 2 weeks, I don't know how long it takes, but like it might be worth it for them at this point. I didn't really think, to be honest, that this was going to take so long to record, that I don't want to hold up if we get all this raw footage of getting an editor and then getting somebody on board to rush it, especially with somebody, because I don't even know when. It's hard to plan when I don't know when we're going to get the footage about hiring somebody else and then onboarding that person. The money saved in kind of outsourcing it might not be worth the time like spent. Right.
I 100% agree. I also think that part of the struggle is I'm not the green light. What's the right word? It's not my approval
that's the key. That's why I don't want to.
I want the decision maker in the room, like as few barrier. Like I want Debbie involved in.
Debbie has to approve this and like it. And so if they have like a package that allows Debbie to like work with them to just like be in the room and make her feel comfortable, I would say it's worth doing that. And
they did have a director option and producer. So
I feel like that might be extreme for the amount of stuff that we're doing, but whatever is making her comfortable to get this approved, I would say might be worth it based off of how long this is taking and how many times that she's reviewing the script.
Yeah.
Because the worst case scenario would be that somebody else edits it and then she doesn't feel comfortable with it. That would actually be my worst case scenario.
Okay. Well, and I think also we're going to get all the footage anyway, so that if we could have someone else be doing this and keep everyone accountable to a timeline, or just be working on it while I can work on other things. You and I can work on other things.
Well, we would hire an editor for this part. Me and you wouldn't do this editing. I don't think that is probably the right way, because this is going to be, this is like proper video editing, especially because this is client service video editing, right? Like we got to get Debbie to approve.
This isn't social media.
This is social media editing. Like we could then take that footage and then chop it up into things that we approve for social. But this is her brand, so she needs to approve this. And if she, and you see how much she cares, which is great.
Yeah,
that's key. And we're trying to sell this for $10,000, so it's like, well, that's the quicker we get it up, the quicker we could just make a sale and get there and recoup the money.
The quote from my front runner studio at the moment was 27,000, which seems like a lot to me, but I have no idea. That's for everything. For
what's just the recording?
So then they sent a bare bones one. Hold on. I think it was like 12. Well, let me double check that. Stage, no. Here we go. No, that's that one. 17,000
for just the raw recording.
Yeah. This is for 2-camera studio shoot. There's a lot of detail about what this includes for the actual studio rental, gaffer. I don't know what DP is, probably director, producer, something like that. Lighting, audio package, camera monitoring and support.
I mean, it seems expensive, but it's New York, so it's not like, it is what it is. I feel like in Atlanta would probably be like 10 to 12, and New York's probably 17. I mean, an extra $10,000 is expensive. You could probably do it in like, let's say 5,000, but this is where I'm thinking like, but if they're going to do it in a way that Debbie approves it quicker, and depending on what the turnaround it is, that they can guarantee it, I'm starting to lean the fact that this is taking so long, and Debbie's kind of meticulous about this. I feel like it might, like, you should talk to her. I feel like it might be better to lump them in servicing her in this contract to just get this done, no matter what it is, and then we at least anchor in a price of knowing what we're trying to recoup as the investment, versus trying to have more project management. You don't want to. I'm not saying you can't edit this, but especially considering what you just said. See, if they're going to do 2 cameras of A and B, that means that part of the video editing is to make it like
consistently shot.
I mean, that's what I'm saying. I don't think is necessary, to be totally honest, but like, if that's what she's doing, she's increasing the production quality. So post-production is going to be, I mean, it's just, I don't think it's more
complicated.
Well, yeah, she's increasing the complication, but that's what she wants to do. So I don't care. It probably will. I'm assuming when she's probably right, like in the sense where like it makes a better video if you kind of are looking at different cameras, or like, it goes through a B shot, an A shot. If they have a nice studio, the lighting is good. And the thing is, it will last for like 5 years. That's the idea.
Right. The other thing I'm seeing on this, and to be clear, Debbie hasn't gone through and this is only for half a day. So I just, if we can get these scripts tight and just once Debbie's comfortable and in the zone, hopefully bang it out.
Yes.
Um,
This should be done in half a day. I
okay.
feel like doesn't.
Okay.
Yeah, you got to like just go in and bang it out.
Yeah. No, I have no idea how that's going to go. It's just going to be, does Debbie feel comfortable? But I also think they're going to, what I want to push for next is that they go tour as soon as the scripts are done, or they go tour the place, get a vibe. Like, do they like the people and how do they feel about the space?
Yeah.
Cause that'll be a big part of it too. Or helpful data to have.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I think I'm leaning the same way that they're professionals. If we can just lump everything together and it's not insane, it's not an extra $20,000 to like occasionally have screen come up to, write out something Debbie's talking about. Cause I think that's going to be the extent of our snazzy add-ons there.
And imagine in this that they will, if you come up with things afterwards, be a little bit more easier to work with to like kind of fix it to make it right. The alternative is to hire editors. I mean, I have a good friend that does video editing, but my fear in going with him is if he's not part of the filming, will Debbie like his output? Is like, I mean, I would think so, but like, why open that door of needing to spend 2 months on editing when if they could just go in, film it, and then they're like, yeah, we know what to do, and we will give it back to you in 6 weeks, and then everyone is on the same page of like just saying it's good, because I'm sure it will be good, and then getting it up. I feel like I'm starting to get to the point where it's like every month that I feel like this is not up is kind of like a lost revenue, like month, because I feel like people will buy it
somewhere else or
right. Well, you always think that people there probably are other people who are creating like digital programs in this space. I still feel like we could do it better, but like,
but we have to do it.
Yeah, we got to do it.
All right. So by next week, I'm going to have three posts for me, 3 posts for the company through the ChatGPT monster to show you.
You could do that before as soon as possible. I'm going to give you after this call later today the writing samples and my instructions. I'm hoping you can update your GPT, throw something in, and then just send it to me. I'm not saying you have to do it today. I'm not even saying that you have to do it this week, but like the point of this is that you got to get into a rhythm of not overthinking it and saying, what I think these are good, or I think these are decent. What do you think? And so we kind of just get past the hurdle of out of those 6, can we at least agree that 1 or 2 of them are approved? So then by next week, maybe the goal is that you post something.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. No, this is good. And I just have to, if I'm worried about rejection, I tend to drag my feet, and there's no one to reject me here. This is just try it and learn from it. And that's what I have to just keep telling myself. So, Sam,
and I'm going to try to break the Band-Aid off that you're probably going to post something and nobody is going to like it or give you any engagement on it. And life will go on and it literally doesn't matter. And you shouldn't view that as, here, I'm going to tell you a really interesting story that has happened to me on multiple occasions for multiple clients. And it actually just happened again with a friend of my brother-in-law, actually, because I think I told you I was helping him with LinkedIn when I was, so I've been through this before. You got to post, blah, blah, blah. And finally he started posting. One of the posts that he did got 3,000 impressions. So for him, it went viral. Saying that loosely, but that's great. 3,000 impressions. So you never know. But the point that I'm trying to say is that all of my clients have said this, and Josh experienced it too. You start posting and you don't get any engagement. And then what happens is I'm telling you, this will happen to you. I predict it, that somebody in your past life will reach out to you they won't like your post. You won't know that they saw it, and they will reach out to you to reconnect because they see you posting on LinkedIn and they want to just see how you're doing and like want to like learn more about what you're working on. It's happened it's happened to me too. I posted and then like my big brother from college reached out to me on DMs. He didn't like it. He didn't engage with it. He didn't drop a comment. That's what happened with Josh. Someone called him from high school out of the blue and said, I saw you posting on LinkedIn. Didn't like it, didn't engage with it, and said, I saw you post on LinkedIn. How are you doing? I'm curious, like, what's new?
What are you up to?
Right. So my point is that you can't get tied to the engagement. It's actually the wrong mentality.
It's not the right metric for who you're reaching.
Of showing that you're branding to give people an opportunity to create inbound. Because if you don't post and they're not top of mind, that's how marketing works. So this happens with my clients too. They go to networking events and then people come up to them and say, hey, you're the guy that's posting on LinkedIn. And it's like, he doesn't get engagement. He doesn't,
Right.
No one likes it. No one comments on it. You feel rejected, but then you go out in the world and people notice and say that they notice. So you can't focus on the metrics. You have to focus on the results that it creates, and the results take time, and you have to push through the perceived rejection. So you're going to get rejected, but I'm telling you, we'll clip this moment, and then maybe I can edit it together with a future version of yourself saying that I didn't get any likes, and then somebody reached out to me and said, oh, I like what you're doing. Tell me more about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Very cool. Very cool. I really hope that happens sooner than later because that would feel great. And it makes sense. You got to put yourself out there for anyone to say anything in response.
Exactly.
And you never know who it's going to be.
Especially if you can start being consistent at it. That's what branding is. So they might not do it on the first one. They might not do it on the second one. But by like week 3 or 4, which is kind of like what my brother-in-law's at, like he's been kind of posting a little bit consistently of finding his style. He got a post that went kind of viral and somebody reached out to him. So it's like he sees it, that it's worth it. So he's a little bit more inclined to kind of push through the perceived awkwardness.
Is there.
Yeah.
I think the other thing is that like we're talking about finding our voice. I don't know what that sounds like yet. Like I can tell you, sure, I like this over that, or I like, I want it to be strong, or I want it to, I think that'll come with just doing it. I suspect the post that I post next will sound very different than the post one of the many posts that I upload in 2 months.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just when you're sitting there with like the blinking, type your entry here. And it's like, well, how do you want this to sound? Good, strong. So yeah, some of it is just exploring, okay, well, how can I tweak that? That's why getting to see your examples of strong writing also will help me.
Yeah, it will.
Yeah. Edit rather than start from scratch. So thank you. Cool. Thank you. I appreciate your time.
Yeah, no problem. We'll talk soon. I'll hit you up. I'll send you that stuff later today.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll get some examples to you in the next couple days.
Perfect.